We go beyond radio with Silk Damoyi on True FM like no one else.
Well, today is Upskill with a Difference. We've got a 2-hour show today, extended upskill, and of course, as usual, Sinet discourse ebaluleke kakhulu. You know, as a young person, especially in education, ubana ngxaki ezininzi when it comes to getting imfundo yakho. Kube khona ke into eziye zingene phakathi kwakho and graduating. And this delay in could be the difference, in fact, between you getting employment or going ungayifumani employment. Bana baninzi bakhalile ke nge-academic negligence, as I disconnectedness between them and their supervisors. And in like baninzi ke xa ufikela kuloo nto leyo. Without funding, umntana ezifundela ngokwakhe, ziba ninzi izinto ezimbambezelayo. But today we'll be getting into that and more. I am joined by a beautiful panel, no strangers to the show, abaninzi kubo, but first time sawubona. Usually I would do the intro and do Dr. Banban with a qualification and this, that and that, sizibale zonke as alphabets. But today we'll start from my left, says introducer, and then moving forward.
I'm studying at Nelson Mandela University. Yes, I'm a student activist, I'm a youth activist. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Greetings to everyone. My name is Yanda Kate, and I'm also a student of politics in Nelson Mandela University. I'm doing my PhD there. And also I'm a lecturer at Walter Sisulu University. I'm teaching politics that side. Thank you.
Okay. I like it.
Evening. Good evening, everyone. Malwande Ogonkalitan. I'm a PhD holder from the Nelson Mandela University.
I love a PhD holder. Like, it's nothing.
I'm not sure if I should. People are talking about being student activist.
Yeah.
I'm no longer a student, so I'm not an activist. Thanks so much. Yeah.
Okay, and then you are speaking to Mrs. Matikizela Teo. I am a scholar, PhD in University of Fort Hare, and I'm lecturing social work at Nelson Mandela University. And I'm here with Una Lady, who's not a stranger also to the show.
Of course.
We've been on the other side of the studios at homes, the interviews together and preparing together. So today I'm doing the feminist thing and bringing her to studio.
I love it.
Thank you.
I love it. Working mothers. Well, today's conversation is going to be long. So what we decided to do is that we're not just going to have a one-day conversation. This is part one of 2 conversations that we're going to be having. The next one is going to be on the 8th. But today, also on the line, we are going to be joined by Udipa Kopiso. Hopefully, I'm pronouncing the name kakuhle. Udipa Kopiso, uzabe join again virtually. Usegautini again. We chatted accountant. Also, I love a colleague of mine once said that because you hear that there's a doctor, I'm a PhD in this, that, and that. And I will say that if in the alphabets, alphabets, so we'll be joined by Uzizipo Zipsimpopom. I think she's a bit shy, but she'll be joining us shortly. She'll be doing the show with me today because I said that you go upskill on can you extend it? And we saw fit that Ingoko must come in because we are big on discourse on the show, as you've seen. We'll be getting the conversation. I need to understand Gala before singing into the conversation. When we're talking about e-supervisors and students, what kind of relationship is that? Itini londoleyo dim student or supervisor yam. What kind of relationship is this? Can I pick my supervisor? Can I say I want to Dr. Banbani to be a supervisor yam kule master zam okanye kwenza kanjani? Ngicela siqale ngapha.
Sure, no, I think from my experience, within the question of whether or not a student can be able to choose their supervisors or not. From honors level, this is my experience from Nelson Mandela University. Supervisors were chosen for us based on the interest of research that we want to pursue for our honors and all those things. But insofar as coming from masters into PhD studies, you are able at least now, because you know the department and you know the people who within the department and their research interests relating to your own research interests, then you can be able to choose your own supervisor. So that's the dynamic for me that I understand that at least for masters and then to PhD, you can be able to, as a student, to choose your own supervisor. That's the point.
Now we'll get into academic negligence. What are we talking about when you're talking about that? Because also talking negligence, now we're talking about academic negligence. What do we mean by that, Doc?
No, thanks so much once again. So, firstly, I think negligence, in simple terms, it means the careless mistakes. So, if you talk about academic negligence, you are talking about a student that is engaged in academic activity, but doing things incorrectly, not from the form of knowing that what the student is doing is incorrect, but from the basis that the student does not know what he or she is engaged on is an incorrect way of doing things. So academic negligence in that simple terms is just that carelessness. For instance, especially when you talk from a research point of view, as you go up, you are required to conduct a research, and of course you would be, whatever that you are discussing on your research, you would have to support it with what has been said by other authors, that is literature. So if you are not acknowledging those people, you just take the work as it is. Kuthiwa kukopa moslanto. So ukopa ke uyakwazi ukopa deliberately or ube ungazi ba uyakopa. So if you don't know that, you've got to reference that negligence is called carelessness according to Usiyanda Kat. So you've got to say that and not say it as if it's your own, So those are careless mistakes, and in some instances are as a result of the students not have been, thoroughly, informed, could be attributed to inexperience of the lecturers, or the lecturers are not actually telling them what is right, on one end. But on the other hand, if you're a proactive student, you've got to take it up to you to really research about what you're doing and what is right and what is wrong. And the universities at postgrad level, for instance, they would have guidance, your reference guide, for instance. If you are doing an assignment, they would tell you if you are using Harvard, APA, and so on. So it should tell you how to reference, and either in text or, on your bibliography. So if you're a proactive student, you are then able to know those things because you've got to engage on all the formats that are assisting the student at whatever level that you are in. But in simple terms, again, is careless mistakes. But if you do that now knowingly, now it's a misconduct.
We are at this time where technology, artificial intelligence is helping. It's a guide. We're having a conversation our way here. And somebody going to university to graduate, but thanks to Indwetile. Yes, giving thanks to Indwetile. Would you now say for that student who might not be as proactive, or naivety, it plays a part? In such instances, do we still call it ukopa okanye situation you were not proactive enough? That bot to help me with what I've already started. Is it still the same thing?
So, when I say that, even isilungu esibendisifundiswa ngesixhosa. So sasiye sixelelwe ke even naxa ubhala kunto okuthiwa kuparaphraser. So I've never used these AI, things for purpose of academics. In fact, I don't even know how to use them. So I've always been engaged, with research, from the point of wanting to understand how to do it and do it through the way that I understand in terms of what has been presented to me. I didn't like the easy way out, because the easy way out it's a similar to cram and pass model. If you are going to use the AI, if you are given a topic and you just type it in there and then it gives you all the results, I'm telling you for free, in 2 days' time after you have submitted, you may get the mark there. But when we ask you about what you had written, you would be unable to engage because you don't understand it. So that's a downside about the technology. On one end, it makes things easy, but on the other hand, there's compromises in those areas. Abanye kabafundi, they are engaged in those artificial intelligence formats for them to pass, because to them it's just to get the marks, to get across. They don't understand that you need to engage, in rigor to understand what is this thing. And sometimes, people like Osianda Bango, the lecturers, when they give you an assignment, they are testing your knowledge. So that's what the test is about, either the assignment or whatever. It's to test your knowledge about a particular phenomenon. So if you are not wanting to engage in that and you just want the way out and look at on the outcome of it, that is, you just want to pass, then it means that we're failing on the teaching. Because I would be convinced when I mark your things, this person knows this thing. And once this person is out there being asked about the very same thing, this person is found wanting. The first thing that they are going to ask, Kantu, who was teaching you? You see, now we take it back to the lecture. So I'm saying this, at times, some of the students, they do it deliberately, using these AI formats. Short-sighted as they are, because they think that they just want to pass. But they don't think about the long-term effects of what they're engaged in that they are compromising themselves in the process. And I used to say, when we do the monitoring and evaluation continuum, I say people, they must not focus on, the outcome. For me, an outcome is before what you want to do. So you must have a backward planning. So if you have an intent of understanding what is this thing about, then it would be easy for you to understand the person wanted, you at the impact level. So if you start from the impact and say, okay, the reason for the test is to test my knowledge about this subject matter. And this subject matter is going to help me in 1, 2, 3 in future.
So that we don't produce subpar, unemployable
Yes.
graduates.
Yes. That's why your Fumane student who try, very educated, this fellow. But when we want the results from the fellow, we're unable to get those results because it's been assisted by these things.
By AI.
Yes.
It is 22 minutes after 6 o'clock. I said that I'm not going to be doing this alone today. I am joined by Zippo Zepsimpopoma. So it's Ngoko Meets Upskill. Zippo is going to be handling all our social media platforms to see si kona P, kwenza kandone P. If you've got any messages, if you've got any voice notes, Zeps, how do they get a hold of us?
On social media.
Live is different, eh? Live cameras are different. It's not radio.
On social media, we are True FM, and the hashtag is #upskill. On the Tumelane voice notes on 072 999 8092. And we want your interaction. We want you guys to engage with us. 072 999 8092.
Okay, quickly, I do believe that see live, yes, but now on radio, CS akawuka kancinci kutsho kuthiwa ke ngoku mandiqale phantsi ndi-introduce uba kwenza kanto nango bana bahleli nabo. We're speaking about academic negligence, so don't worry, Dwakhu, nguvakele wena. Hayi. Kaloku khange sisebenzise AI. We're talking academic negligence and disconnectedness between e-learners okanye the scholars and the supervisors zabo. Issues that abantwana abaninzi abakhalaze ngazo. We've seen social media where a young lady was complaining about usokola kwakhe wenze LLB kwi-university zalapha ephondweni. Esitsho uba iingxaki zam zininzi kakhulu kwenzeka le nto ithile. We know of one Nati who was meant to have graduated a year or so ago, but because now supervisor wake uresigned letomka, now akhange kufakwe replacement. Xa kubuya ke ngoku uthi masiqale phansi man, makwenziwe corrections ezinjena nenjena nenjena kha resubmit kwakhona, not because her work was not up to, but because akhange abe naxesha to go through everything. So we're talking about issues as njalo, but again I will say that this is a two-part show. Today we're talking about this part, but we'll find the solutions as well by sitting na. Firstly, we got into understanding the academic negligence on the part of the scholar, the student. Such as that when you come to use there are izinto esifumana ivayisi zethu sisebenzisayo, but using such, as the doc was saying, is buying like because later when you are tested on the knowledge you supposedly have, ayikho loo nto leyo. But I said that where I usually introduce my guests, but namhlanje ndifuna bona ngokwabo ke, for those that have missed lo part leyo, masiqale kuqala.
Oh yes, igama lami again nguSiyanda Wakate. I'm from Nelson Mandela University. I'm doing my PhD there in political studies, and also I'm a lecturer at the University, University. I'm also teaching politics that side.
Thank you. Ndinguzukisa Sigoqo. I am studying masters in politics at Nelson Mandela University. I'm a youth activist. I'm a student activist as well.
Do you know what I love? Is that you can tell, student activists, you can tell. Oh, think this means the cap alone says,
Thank you so much, Silk. Again, Busisiwe Madigizela Teu, and I am studying a PhD in social work at Forte, and I'm a lecturer at NMU in the social work department. And again, I'm reintroducing my daughter here, Una Lady, who has been my co-host in a lot of things.
Yes.
And co-researcher. So, Slele Apa Sobabin Namhlanje.
Okay.
Kokhona nguMalwande wakwaNkalitshana. I'm a PhD holder from the Mandela University. I think that's enough.
Yeah. And that's okay. It's okay. We'll be checking your social media messages as well as we are live on Facebook. We'll be taking your questions. If you've got any questions, you're a student or you're a scholar, you are a lecturer, you're a supervisor, now you feel like I need to say my part as well. Now you are allowed to, as I said, that this is a positive simple Poma is joining us today, and she'll be handling all of that. Oh, I must go from the messages. And I'm not very big on calls as well, you know, because I feel like they'll take time. Send us a voice note. Messages on WhatsApp and Facebook as well. That's the same thing, Sebs.
Mr. Damoy, there's a question. Ukhona umuntu obuzayo uba, is there some sort of guidance or some sort of training AAE provide to postgraduate students and supervisors institutions of higher learning to sort of mitigate ezinye zengxaki postgraduate students eziye zizifface xa besenza their postgraduate studies? So andiyazi ukuba sizawuphendulwa nguwe.
Masiqala apha kosisibhe.
Thank you. So yes, PhD candidates, they have throughout the year the research offices of the different universities. I'll talk about Forte, I'll talk about UOFS where I've studied my undergraduate, I'll talk about NMU. They all have a research calendar. And this calendar is put on memos for students where they are asked to register and go to these sessions, the ethics, sessions, the methodology, sessions, the literature reviews. But also for example, I've been at NMU now for 6 months, and one of the things that I'm required to do as somebody who's going to be getting into the role of being a supervisor is first of all doing an ethics course. And then throughout the year, I am implored, literally, there are blasts every other day on my emails. Nancy e-session, go and do this. Nancy e-session, go and do that. Nancy e-session, go and... So that you are able to have, be capacitated when you start dealing with students. And it's also very important, for me at least, to frame the supervisor student or a PhD candidate or master's candidate relationship. And the way that I frame it is to say, you've got to remember that this is a project. And as a project, you need to decide, am I the project manager? Am I the COO of this project? Or am I passively moving through the project? I've always framed myself as the COO of my project. And I've seen my supervisor as a board member, even the chairperson of the board. so that when I look at this relationship, it's not a top-down relationship, because in higher education in and of itself is very hierarchical. So if you position yourself in a way that means that something comes from the top and you're receiving at the bottom, there's a power imbalance. There are asymmetries there, where you are always being told and it's expected of you to listen. Now, I've always, positioned myself as somebody who's a partner, where the chairperson of my board guides me, gives me resources, opens up certain doors. For example, if I don't know research workshop whereas just like a board member would do, coming in with all of those wealth of resources. But as the COO, I've got to manage my project, the initial stage of the project. What must happen? How do I implement, and so on and so forth. So I think we need to understand that higher education in and of itself has power imbalances and power dynamics that are unequal. And we've got to push ourselves as students to the center so that we can almost create balance and reclaim the power to ourselves, in terms of saying, like Utok was saying, are you going to really have rigor in your work, or are you going to passively get that 50% helped along with artificial intelligence? How are you going to do it? It's a decision that you really need to make, and I think we need to take that stand as students. And I speak both as a student and as a supervisor. I've got both caps at this point.
I think le part ye academic integrity. Diafuna yazi ndobana, are there courses ezinikwayo so that they know what's expected of them as students, and what is it that they can and cannot do regarding plagiarism, nezinye referencing, all of that?
Okay, because Mike, yeah. Yeah. No, in the experience at university one. Yeah, so I must put that disclaimer. But I also have knowledge that even the funding institutions, for instance, NRF, they are the ones that are funding, the postgrad studies. They offer the workshops to the students, in all forms, how to conduct a research. I mean, specific for honors, there would be one for honors, there would be one for masters and PhDs, because the levels of comprehensive and intensity of the research is different in those levels, and therefore the level of knowledge that has to be shared through those workshops does assist the students. So I do know that from a funding point of view, the funding institutions does offer those workshops. They would have done so at Mandela University. The second part, I do know that the institutions themselves, the research and development department, there's a research and development department, for instance, at Mandela University, that manages all the postgrad studies. They do offer the workshops in different intervals of research, on literature review. In fact, at times they start from even proposal level, literature review level, your methodology, your ethics, your data analysis, and all the way up to the end. So there are workshops, series of workshops. And there would have been even, some institutions, there would be writing retreats where, students at different levels, they would go, and something like a camp elsewhere, writing retreat, where they sit there, they do their writings, get the guidance and all of that. So there are those platforms that are being provided for. But ingxaki soloko iba on the part of the student. That's why I said you need to start from the end as a student when you engage in your academic activity. What is it that we are wanting to do, Because some students, even though those platforms are provided for, they don't take advantage of them. Okay, for me, I did not take advantage of them because I did not need them, because I would have applied myself. I knew what I wanted way before I get into it. But I'm saying there are students that are not as proactive as I was, as old as I was, because I went into university. So so it was easy for me to really, that's why I didn't even have a problems with my supervisors, because we understood what we wanted to achieve. And in some instances where we differ on something, like my sister was saying, I would tell the supervisor, look here, Mna, I'm the one who picked this topic. We expect Kwesi space, I accept it. But the angle that I want to drive, it is going to assist me there. So that's why I'm driving it in this fashion. So I accept your advice in this part, but I don't think that it is going to assist me to get to where I want to go. For as long as that advice, it's not a process-related advice. Because on the process, you can't flout it. But if it's on a content, then it becomes an issue. That's where you become then the COO or CEO. Because this, we may not like it. In reality, the relationship between a student and a supervisor, there will always be power imbalances in there, whether you like it or not. But what you need to do is to stand your ground and say, Nandi nita nje wena to guide me, but I'm going to lead this thing in this way. In some instances, some supervisors, they would even tell you that this is not the right angle. You're not going to make it. I've met students before that have done it before. So that's why you need to then to be firm. I say, no, but this is what I want. And the relationship, special needs, is faglandau with the supervisors. So zifune ukukhokhela kule research yakho. Fumanise uba ngoku, you're not doing it for yourself now. Uyenzela yena. This thing of dishonesty at times, even from the supervisors, it does happen. They channel students towards their interest. They use the outcomes or the findings of the students for their own benefit, for their own programs, which may not necessarily be related to their position as supervisors, who institutions are, but outside. So you must always be careful around that. But at times, you've got to tag along.
I love the conversation around the different levels of where you need to be. From me deciding that this is what I want to do, I think the one thing that we don't speak about, we speak about the number of dropouts ku first years, but we don't speak about the number of dropouts ku master's level. Because as I'll say, ready, we drop out. If you can't correct, we drop out. Now, do you sharp the masters of law? But I'm okay with that. The master of broadcasting, I'm okay. Masieke, because it's not working. The different levels before getting to that part of me getting my doctorate or PhD, what levels are there that a student needs to go through? After deciding what I want to do, what needs to follow for me to get to the point I need to be, without the distractions of the supervisor, but what do I need to prepare for before I get to the part where the graduate is
Okay, no. Well, I'm going to be read, so
drop out.
Yes. No, I don't think it's drop out if you're progressing. So
okay, that's
yes,
easy. Yes.
Yes. So my experience is that, well, you must first understand that research general is not going to be easy. Uzawuxakeka, uzawukhathala, uzawufunuyeka. Sometimes uzawuyeka, uphinde uzicenge, For as long as you don't deregister, that's all. Sometimes you will go a week without thinking about your research because it's very difficult, it's stressful. But it's important that you understand that you want to do this, you understand that it's part of your journey, you want to achieve, you want to get to the level of dog. It's important to set out your goals and understand that. But the process is that the first thing is to think about what you want to write about. You must have serious interest on your research area. So if you pick up a topic because it's trending on the news and stuff, you will drop out definitely. So you must really like this topic you want to research about. You must be passionate about the field and everything, so that it keeps on driving you. Even if you think that you should drop out, you can't, because this is what you want to do. You are passionate about it. You are invested in it. It's in your interest. So you must fall in love with your topic, number one. Number two, you must outline your plan in terms of what you want to achieve, when, and how you're going to get there and all that. So the issue is, if you just jump and throw yourself in the deep end, you will feel like you're not progressing at all. You know, so you have to set out that in 6 months or so, I must have completed my proposal. In 8 months, I must have presented it, defended it. You know, by the end of the year, it must have been processed by the department, passed, and all that. So that is the process. Essentially, you must first commit to it and then put your effort and understand that it will be difficult, it won't be easy, but you have to put the effort. Even if it's difficult, you have to put the effort. Sometimes you will want to drop out, but you will feel like crying sometimes. Sometimes you will cry, but still, yeah. It's a daunting task.
Yes.
Yes.
I feel like Zipsi, we should be taking our Bugala conversation because we should be taking our Bugala conversation because it's a lot. Now we're speaking about that. With the issue of time management, somebody once said that you need to have a nice or healthy life. Academics or life work balance. Others will say that you can't balance. It's either you focus on one thing now and succeed in it, and then uzokwazi move on. I'm sure SSB might have something to say about that. But the importance of time management when it comes to academics, when it comes to submissions, when it comes to zondezo. For somebody who's saying that in their sebenza during the day, late in the buy and wayabandwana, how important is that time management?
Sure, I think in my experience, time management is the paramount important thing for a postgraduate student. Everyone who does postgraduate studies should be able to manage their time correctly. But insofar as that question is concerned, I think we'll have different experiences as postgraduate students precisely because of our own socio-economic conditions or background and all those things. For instance, there are students who just go and register to university and then they are focused on their studies. They don't have other issues outside that thing. And then there's some of us who have to look for a part-time job and all those things so that you can support yourself and all those things. So it becomes difficult. But for me, because I've been working with Darren Zukse for a long time, and he understands that whatever we do, there's a room for research. And then I think my advice will usually be when I speak to them is that when you first wake up in the morning, you must think about your research and then look at your studies and everything else, so that by the time you continue with your life and everything, then everything is sorted. But I think in my experience as a postgraduate student, the question of time management, I think it's a subjective issue precisely because for me, I've managed to work on my master's, for instance, and I focus a lot on so far as completing my research and all those things. But the rate of the matter is that you never really meet the deadlines or the submission days and all those things because there are a whole lot of issues that are concerning that thing. But also the one thing that I think we should note is that in the question of time management, also the relationship with the supervisor becomes important. Precisely because there are the instances whereby I felt that I submitted on time everything and then the supervisor responds or doesn't even respond to the issues of deadlines and all those things, and then you get disturbed as a student and all those things. So I think for me, as Doc said, that the project of research is really depends on yourself insofar as taking it seriously and understanding that this is your work and not the supervisor's work. Precisely because, and this is my own experience, in my final year of master's, there was a time where I just decided that I would just write my thesis. Let me just not bore my supervisor because of the emailing thing and the response that disturbing me as a student and stuff. And then at the final end, I just submitted everything to him. And then that's when he decided to work now because of he realizes on his own that, hey, Siana is pushing me now. And then, so the question of time, I think as a student, and this question that we're raising of the healthy lifestyle, and all those things are subjective insofar as a person, the background you come from, you have a luxury of having a healthy lifestyle in the first instance and all those things. So, but, and one of the things that affects students, the postgraduate, is the question of funding and all those things. Some people, in as much as they are pursuing their research, they have all other problems. They can't sustain themselves and all those things. So you can't really argue that every student is expected to focus on the same level so far as the research and the time is concerned. But for me, I think every postgraduate student should know that the research comes first and everything else then follows. So each and every day you just put in your hour, your 2 minutes in your research. For me, I have a working calendar. You see that each and every day it reminds me, or let's say 2 days in a week, that write 500 words, read a chapter, read the journal article. So I know that if I follow that sequence, at least by the end of the month or the end of the semester, I would have produced this amount of work and all those things. So time management is very important.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Sisbi, I want to go to ad break quickly. But I want to ask the same question, but now, Sisusela Kepi, lecturer, as a professional that you are, the time management and the healthy life-work balance, teen. Quickly, run to networking, come back and continue with our conversation. Do make sure that you send us your WhatsApp messages and your voice notes. We're also live on Facebook at TRUFM. If you want to radio, go Facebook. We'll run to those ad breaks and come back with our conversation. Before we went to the ad break, I asked about the relationship between work-life balance. How realistic is that?
It's very hard, sir. It really is very hard to do. I've never known the economist way to say. Like now she's here with me, and I was right at the final stages doing my data analysis, and that needed for me my doing really creatively. I would work, so and it was during COVID, it was 2020. I would work online. There was this craze about having this meeting online during that time, to prove that we're working for some reason. So from 9 o'clock you're in a meeting all the way till 4:30. And in between these meetings, it's just the two of us. I'm feeding her, I'm changing her, I'm making a little that we are as a mother, right? And there's also that level of the mental health. You are sitting at home by yourself with a child, you are online. And I've got to push through. If it were not for my supervisor, Professor Negligence, I would never have done it. Because first of all, she gave me, she understood that I was a mom first. She centered me as a human being, as a mother first. And as a mother who's got to make a living, who's got to make, minimum level of the money. And then, as a scholar, validating me and the fact that, I've never heard somebody who would say, you're a very intelligent woman. I don't know how many times she said that throughout my masters. And that was so important for me because not even my mom could understand. I mean, my mother is sort of from a family where all of my aunts and my mom are master's graduates, but they just could not. There wasn't anything that they could put on the table that could make me transcend and be mentally strong, And over and above that, when you're thinking about mental health and the balance, there are circumstances that are sometimes beyond your control. Like when I was doing my master's, where I could not even go outside. It was like a thing. And you are subjugated in the space, or is it a partnership? Is it something that you feel like it's easy? And right off the bat, I think when you are thinking about which supervisor you would want to be in your corner, who is it? Are we batting from the same corner towards the same goal? Or is the supervisor already showing signs that I want you to but I want you to work towards Ezami goals? You know, and already you feel that right off the bat, this is not the right person. And that's why I say positionality of the student is very important. You must know, we need to say this and normalize it, that it is your study, it is your project. And you have the right to say, I actually don't want to work with you anymore. I actually would like to have somebody else work with me. And the way that institutions are structured, again, I said it earlier when we started, there's so much power emphasized on the supervisor and the institution side, so much, especially for masters and PhD students who are not even represented, I think, by the SRC student activist. And I always felt, I was in the SRC, by the way, AU Ofs, and we had a postgraduate officer in the SRC, somebody who was responsible for postgraduates. But I became a master's student, I am a PhD student, and I feel very disenfranchised when it comes to thinking about how would I, if I had to now take a stand, who would I go to in the SRC, for example? And all of those things play up in your mental health and your study. For me, it would have been work, study, family balance. You know what I mean? All of those things take a toll. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Thank you, Sis. Sips, any questions online?
We have a few voice notes on WhatsApp, ne comments ezimbini, and this as phone. I think masiqale ke voice notes, and then when we come back, so join comments on social media.
Okay. Also, a quick note, we will be crossing over to esports in a couple of times. So I think the first crossing will come up shortly. Soccer fans, bangasibulala kuba senza ngalonto le. Soccer fans bangasibulala kuba senza ngalonto le. Ndiyabaza abantu besport bastrict kanjani ngesport sabo. We're having this conversation. We're talking about negligence, academic negligence and disconnectedness. As Usisbi said, it's important to know what you want, how you want it, when you want it, ne, dog, so that you are able to not just strive for that but also to get where you want to get. Because we talk about finishing our qualification record time. Considering a PhD setting, don't record time. 2 years 2 years or less. 5 years, you know, but finishing in record time isn't as bad like as but the relationship between now the student, the supervisor, the institution, because I think that's what you touched on as well. It's and also finding a balance. At times it's hard, and at times you have to focus on one thing and do that thing. But we'll Masiqale siye kukhanyiswa chakho ne. Siqale sikukhanyiswa chakho and come back and play those voice notes. While we wait for the voice notes. I think
Masiqale ku Facebook, Mr. Damoy. There's someone ongenile ku Facebook. I think uzosibuyisela umva kancinci. Uthi on Facebook, at first year, e-referencing is not taught properly. Now they expect us to know how to reference, yet you are from high school. So, and yes, sibuya umva kancinci kodwa ke ndiyafuna siyiphendule la question.
No, thanks for the question. No, at first year you are taught referencing because there are tutorials for that. So there are TADS classes that you are supposed to attend as supplementary to classes. So that's where you are taught writing skills and how to write and academic writing in general. Okay. So if you attend the tutorials, you will learn how to reference. At first year level, yes. Yeah,
I think this also comes into the importance of those tutorials because I don't need to. Because we are fun, okay. We are fun attend, okay. Yeah, do you have any more?
Are there any policies or procedures ezincedisayo to address ezinye grievances abazifaceayo as postgrad students, especially grievances towards their supervisors ku institutions of higher learning?
Doc? Spotlight, ne?
I suppose, surely within the institution, there would have been policies, to address such issues. And it's just a matter of students that they need to explore within their institution. I mean, they can always write, if a student is a first year, they can be able to write, for instance, even to the register of the university and say, who lectures so and so, this is what he's doing to me. And in the instance of a postgrad, for instance, the hierarchy that perhaps you don't like, you've got the HOD. So you can write to the HOD, or you can write to the school of government of that department, or you can even write even to the dean for that matter. So there are ways in which you can address such things. It's just a matter that you need to just follow the correct process. If their process says, if you're not happy with your supervisor within this institution, the first person that was write to is either the HOD of the department. If that does not get the attention, you can escalate to the director of the school. And if that doesn't work, you can also write perhaps to the director of the research and development unit within this, or department within the institution. And if it doesn't get the attention, you escalate it to the dean. And if it doesn't get that attention, you take it all the way up to the level. But the easiest way with the students at undergrad level, they would use the SRC to raise their grievances. Then the SRC becomes the voice for them. But there are ways in which you can always address those things.
Sis B?
Yes, I wanted to say yes, indeed, I agree with the doc, because the first, in Nelson Mandela, for example, with e-learner guides that students would get at the beginning of the year, it's a lengthy document, 18 pages, but in those learner guides, there are processes of what, when plagiarizing, what does the consequence and what does it look like? You've got a grievance against your lecturer. Mm-hmm. Because of the power dynamic and power imbalance, you can write to the coordinator of the year, you can write to the HOD, and you can escalate progressively. I think the biggest problem that students have is this imposter syndrome. Am I even supposed to be here? You know, you just feel a little bit misplaced and out of place, and so you don't take up the structures that you need to be taking up to be able to center yourself in any situation that is happening. And I think if we are able to get to the point where we are confident, we've got a self-esteem and know that we are supposed to be here, then we would be able to actually take up the processes, because there's no reason why a student should be, you know, feeling like they especially at undergrad, where they have the support of their class reps, the support of their year coordinator, the support of their HOD, the support of the dean even. They have all of that support, the support of the SRC. At postgraduate level, it becomes a little bit tricky in the sense that, first of all, not all of us have finished honors and gone to masters and gone to PhD. We have responsibilities. And the mental strength that it takes to be able to write an email and center yourself, sometimes it's a lot. It's a lot. But after you've done all of your work responsibilities with all the politics that go with that, you have evenings where you have to decompress, deal with family, and where is the time of the actual, of the struggle, if I can put it that way. That's why I'm asking, from the student activist side, how do you make it easy for us, as postgraduate students in the masters and the PhD, levels, to be able to make it easier and more fluid. But the same process is available to them or to us as masters and PhD candidates who are in the academy, to say, if into let's push the mental. And yes, there's always that thing at the back of your mind that I'm going to be victimized. Take the chance. Take that chance and see if ndiyayithatha le chance, am I really going to be victimized? Because you more often die more than once if you don't take that chance and fight for your rights. You know what I mean?
Voice notes on WhatsApp. Please interact with us on social media. On Facebook, we are TrueFM, and the hashtag is #UpskillsNow in the live audience. If you guys have any questions, please niphakamise isandla ningoyiki, sizawuzabona, and then sithathe questions zenu. Let's pay some bills, come back, siye voice notes zethu.
Molo msasazi. Mna ndingaqala ndithi kwi-postgrad yam indlela iqale yantle kakhulu with usupervisor benjengaye kwi-masters ebendizenza. Sabe sisebenzisana kakuhle ke kakubekho nto ingxaki zoqala ngosemke ke ngoku kulo institution yeyi hayi ke ngoku ndaqala apho ubona ii-flames kwanzima kambe uphele unyaka okokoko ndisenza u-up and down ndisenza ii-follow-ups komnye ke uwona ndimnike usupervisor uyayibo yazi ezo challenges zento yokubana ngaba kubakho ingxaki kuthi ii-students azicommunicate mna I was communicating kangangoko but ke umntu akwazi uhlala 2 months 3 months engathethi abe umsebenzi ukuye uyabo so ndistruglishe kakhulu shema ndifuna uphosisa ndisokole kakhulu to an extent uba ndide ndibhalele ke ngoku nabaphathi be-institution abaphathi be-faculty ukuze izothi kanti into yam iyancedakala ekugqibeleni ke shem ndanikezelwa komnye ke ukusupervise hayi shem wandiqhuba kakuhle ndamaneja ke unograduate ndamaneja ke unokuba at least ndiphume kuloo nto yena lo wandisokolisa kambe uyisefuna ndiqale ne-research esendiyigqibile phantsi uyayibo so usupervisor wam wokuqala nokugqibela ngabona abantu endinothi ndiyababulela kakuhle kule ndlela ukuzothi kangoku nokuba ndifundise lukhulu more especially okokuqala sendikwazi nje ukwenza le nto ndikwazi ukuyenza ndifundise lukhulu ndifunde lukhulu kuye so ndiyambulela nokuba ngalaa ndoda enkosi ke msasazo but ke le ndlela ye-postgraduate ayondlela ilula ifuna noko abantu abomeleleyo ayibafuna abantu noko abanentliziyo ezithambileyo.
Hi Msasazi, you're doing postgraduate studies. I feel like it's not for the faint-hearted. Inintsi into esingayixelelwayo that I feel we need to be told about. Ukungena, the process, okanye I feel like each and every department should have a process of a supervisor, a layout as well as a student, a layout uba niza kwenza njani nobabini ngoba I feel like i-supervisors sometimes zibhizi izinto zazo. I started my journey in 2021 but I haven't graduated, not because andisebenzi. Xa kuthiwe mandithi ndiyasebenza but ndiyithumele into, then after that kuthi cwaka ubhale i-email ubuze, you do phone calls, no response, no nothing. Sometimes you go to their offices, abekho as officing zabo because abanye they travel, abekho umuntu angabikho for 2 months, akatsho kuwe I won't be around for 2 months. Do A, B and C so that we can progress. Those are the kind of issues that we deal with as postgraduates. I feel like institutions should have a mandate for both the student and the supervisor because most of the time abantu aba affected are students. So many of my friends have dropped out. Athi umntu hayi ndiyancama ngoku because kaloku hayi this oko ndisenza into eyi-one, like I'm stuck in the same thing. So a lot needs to be done about postgraduate studies. A lot is not said about doing postgraduate studies. Uncedo luyanideka. Department of Education needs to do something about it because communicating nabantu that are affected, which are students most of the time.
Oh, okay, that was a bit heavy. It's 10 minutes after 7 o'clock. My name is Sok Damoy. I am joined by Uzazipo Zipsimpopom, and of course I've got a great panel with me. But also on the line we are joined by Udita Kopiso, who is a Gauteng-based chartered accountant. I think let's quickly go to an ad break and come back and get into those voice notes. Data, I'm sure Uzvile voice notes is Ziana, but we'll get into those after this ad breaks and then see a quiz sports no truck. Camera Tanda Zebs. Good try, Camera Tanda. I did say, besides the panelists next to me, we are joined by Udita Kopiso, who is a Gauteng-based chartered accountant. Dita, I'm hoping that you heard some of the voice notes that we got. Now, I've been doing this for 5 years now, 4 or 5 years. And the lack of communication from my supervisor is frustrating to a point where you know what, it's enough. The student who now has reached la point yokba I can't anymore because I've tried everything. I've written to everyone that was mentioned here, but still there's no help. How does one go about working around that? Data. Okay, I think Nobusaqhawukela ka ngoku ne, but Skoko is going to work on that. Do you have any questions on WhatsApp or?
Not yet.
Okay.
Yeah, not
Okay.
yet. I think, you know, we take from.
Silk no Zizibo, I'm truly grateful for ithuba lokuba lapha nani today. Hi, can you hear me, Silk?
Yes, I can hear you. Ungabi na stress on it. There will be a bit of a delay between us since you're online on. Sispi, I think while usisaza motita kwakhona, this issue because voice notes is vile ngoku. What are your thoughts, sir? Okay.
You know, sometimes it's easy to raise some of these difficulties. But sometimes I always want to frame the difficulties differently. The reason why I'm saying that, because you don't want to scare people not to progress to that level of postgrads. Because the minute we overemphasize on the problems, it's more likely that we are discouraging people from getting to that level. And the situation as it were in the country now, we've got very few postgrads up to the level of PhD. And the manifestation of that is the influx of foreign national teaching in our institutions. If you go to the University of Fort Hare, for an example now, almost 80% of the Department of Education in there is foreign nationals. Yeah? So when you try to understand what's the situation, you are told that it is because we advertise. In terms of the process, they must advertise at least 2 more times. And on the 3rd time, if there's no South African, then they're going to take a foreign national in that. Now, they say we've gone to that level of advertising for the 3rd time because we can't get the South Africans. Now, they can't get the South Africans because we've got a low throughput at postgrad level. Now, that's why I don't like to speak about the problems mainly, precisely because I don't want to discourage people from not engaging in the postgrad. In the very first instance, when they go to the postgrad level in some instances, if not most, because they're escaping unemployment. It is not the primary purpose that they wanted. As you can ask any child. They would never tell you that I want to have a PhD or master's. They are dreaming of, after 3 years or 4 years, I want to go back and work. After their matric, that's what they tell you. Now, a shock of life comes to them. Some of them, that reality sinks in when they are doing their final year. But Jesus, I may not get employment. I must apply for my postgrad. So most year students, if not 80%, parallel from the black community, they went to the postgrad level because they are running away from poverty and unemployment. Now, if you don't have that context, and you always speak about the problems in the higher education space, particularly at postgrad level, we are discouraging many of those students. So, postgrad, I'm not going to lie to you, it's a lonely journey, in particular masters and PhD, because especially if you are doing it by research at master's level, not by coursework, your loneliness starts there because it's you and the supervisor. But what we need to talk about is how best can we support, the students from postgrad up to the progressing to the PhD level, so that we are able to address these issues. Because, there would be a difference with me as Malwan, the South African, lecturing uPaxo, and you as a Nigerian lecturing uPaxo. For me, I know I'm investing to my country people if I lecture uPaxo, and therefore I must do my level best to ensure that I'm giving it the quality of the education, because this person is going to come and rescue the community. That's if we understand the essence of education. But with you as a Nigerian, you came all the way, or whatever, I'm not saying I'm against Nigerians, but wherever you come from, Your primary purpose here is to extract income. Yeah? So you came all the way to extract income. So you're just wanting to make a living. Whether you pass or not, in most instances, it's not your problem. That's why even the institutions themselves now, they decided, some of them, to introduce, a system that, again, I have a problem with it, which is outcome orientated. That says, if abantwana bakho abapasi, they ask you questions. But you know what you're going to do when, in order for abantwana bakho abapasi wenza ntoni? Uzabanika, uzabaspoon feeder. What are you doing with that? You are collapsing the very same kids. So it means that you don't have this sense. You're not going to strengthen your teaching methodologies to ensure that they understand. But rather you're going to focus on that because you're going to be questioned. But with me, it might be different. I might have to strengthen, and I can be able to sit even in the department to defend that, no. Here, it is not because maybe the students are not grasping. It is because maybe there's no proper support even with the institution from infrastructure and so on.
Yeah.
But with you, you're not going to argue firmly because you're a foreign national. You don't want to lose this job. You're going to do anything to retain the job.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying the discussions about the problems in our higher education institution must be understood within the context of what the education is.
Okay.
And if we understand from that level, then it means we're going to put much more effort to ensure that we produce what we need, because sizutyala umoya sivuye isitshingitshane yaqonda kufuneka siqiniseke ba apha lo muntu simfundisayo is going to address issues of society tomorrow.
Yes.
So that's the essence. So that's why I don't like to engage too much on the problems.
On the bad things.
I understand them, but I want us to always speak about how best can we address them.
Okay.
As lonely as the postgrad studies are, but it's important. And for me, I don't want to lie to you, research is not difficult. That's why you're ufunda grade standard 6 now. Ufuna umkhethisa subjects. Uzayibaleka maths and science. Do you know why? That kid has never been even taught maths and science in proper maths and science. But because there's this information propagated that maths and science is difficult, and therefore they choose not to go to that route because they've been told that this thing is difficult. Now, what is the downside of that? They are going to go to the easiest way. When they get to grade 12, the trauma of their life, this kid wanted to be a doctor. When they get to grade 12, they can't apply to be a doctor because they've not done maths and science, which is required. So that's why I must not always create alternatives that are easy targets. Second, we must not speak, kakubi kakhulu ngezinye zezinto because we scare people. So i-TK context yamsis, as difficult as it is, as it's been portrayed, I choose to say it's not difficult, but it's a lonely journey.
Yeah.
We need to encourage people to undertake their studies at postgrad level, especially those that are doing academic qualifications. Because the difference is there's an academic qualification here, and then there's also those ones that are
professional ones.
Professional qualifications.
Yeah.
The struggle that we face in the most instance is on the academic qualification, because unemployment is felt more in that part, especially if you don't go as far as postgrad level. All right.
Sis B, we have a problem. How do we to mitigate? I feel like how do we make sure that we evade the problem before we get to that point with student supervisor? I feel like this we can put this as in negligence. For 2-3 months, I'm not available. How do we avoid all of that?
We spoke about it on the break.
Yes.
And my take is, right off the bat, when you are getting into postgrad, you're getting into your masters, be purposeful, be intentional as the student about who you want to be your supervisor. Mresearche lo mntu lowo, mjonge ku LinkedIn, look at their articles, look at how they write, look at where they are positioned in terms of articles zabo, first author, okokoko. Because that also tells you about your personality. You might not be a priority to them because there's no implications. Being a first author means certain privileges in the academy, you know, in higher education and so on and so forth. And who are, you know, WhatsApping us, they don't know. We don't know until we are in it. When you are looking for a supervisor, look at their articles. How many articles have they produced? Have those articles been cited? Have they put themselves as first authors? Collaborations. You understand? Those things are very important to sort of psychoanalyze, if you like, because you really are getting into a project. And as project manager, I will continue saying this until we get it, until we feel like we are not imposters in the spaces that we are in. Okay. As COO of your project, you do the research. You do the research and you look at who am I dealing with. And then you write to them and you wait on them to tell you, uyifunde la letter azakubhalela yona in response ba uthini kanye kanye, analyze ba uthini lamntu, because you are getting into a 5-year relationship with this person. That is a long time. You know, I got married for a year and I was divorced the following year. That was a very, you know, the longest relationship I've had was with my supervisors. So choose very carefully.
Choose carefully. Divorce.
It's 26 minutes past. So let me finish my point. Yeah. So as you are choosing that, when you get into that relationship, there is also a contract that you should be getting in with your supervisor. You need to be getting into that contract so that expectations are spelled out.
Nice.
What is it that you are expecting and is expected of you? What is it that you are expecting of the supervisor and is expected of them to you? You know, that reciprocity within the relationship. And I believe that is the kind of document when you are saying, now I have, you know, separated na 2-3 months separation differences as be resolved. You understand? That document and your evidence of the things that you've done is able to then speak for you. But also, Doc here is talking about it being a lonely relationship or a lonely journey, postgraduate. I beg to differ, Doc. I think in Dokokbanga, but there are modalities. For example, I was leading with a friend of mine from UOFS who's just completed her PhD, a group called the Shut Up and Write group. And within that group, I think we had a friend from Canada, we had a friend from Lesotho, from WITS, UCT, and UOFS, and myself, F40. And we would go online on a weekly basis to go and debrief. As that debrief were also sessions for advice to say, you know, ne supervisor so, how do I deal with it? Stress so, you know, and we debrief and we give each other advice and we go online and we check what are the things that are available to us as tools to assist us. And we made it through. My friend is a doctor of sociology now at UOFS, and of course she's been a teacher for a very long time. She actually lectured me when I was doing my undergrad, and she's finished PhD without mental health issues because of that kind of support that we created for each other. I think the mechanisms that you're talking about, Doc, to say how does the institute, the academy itself, build in those support groups, those support mechanisms for their postgraduate students is what maybe we should be talking about. But for me, it wasn't as lonely as, you know, it would have seemed to be, and it still isn't, because we still have that kind of a relationship that we shut up and we write, and that is more about debriefing, equipping each other with the relevant knowledge, equipping each other even with, as I got into the academy and became a lecturer, some of my friends were lecturers having finished their PhDs and telling me, ube careful about the pothole, Ube careful about this. You're teaching philosophy. You need to join that group when you get in. You need to do that. Those kinds of things were very, very helpful for me. Maybe because I'm a female and we work in groups and it's easier for us to work in that way. That's how I worked.
I like that a key community around you so that uzokwazi uqhubekeka kakuhle ngemfundo yakho. Quickly sabaleka siye kukhanyiso chwakho. It's 29 minutes after 7 o'clock. We did say that it's an extended ignoko. I've got about 31 minutes left. I've got 31 minutes left. Chwako?
Thank you very much. 21 tonight let's distinguish zoqala ke walo mdlalo ke we-CAF Champions League final sikele iphaka likumameli Sundowns eqala ke Pyramid FC. Pyramid FC mningaza phambili ke nqaku elinye eqandeni apho sibone ukuthi Mayele eza nenqaku apho ke lenqaku belise ke 24th minute isaza bokuqala nje ke lo mphoko promote bengadibana kahle ke nebhola ke suka ngemva from ecala ke iPyramid ke ngoku then ke Hamdi ke Muhammad Hamdi osofanele yellow card ke naye apho ke edibene le cross ankle apho ke fika ke ukhumula mokukana kukana ke very clear the football asande state njengoba zikafisa Mayele wabuke uMayele ke dibasa ke nomnatha ke lo hlobo khupule ke ngoku iqala ke le Pyramid agithi ke by 2-1 on aggregate ke ngoku that means by Sundowns they now need to score just equalize umdlalo and then from there ke ngoku umdlalo ends 1-1 umdlalo zona ku shade penalties so Sundowns ke they score 2 ke ngoku yachitha ke the entire complexity of umdlalo but kwangoku they do need to equalize kumbule ke Pyramid yazibona le ke to the 14th minute ke apho ke that went wide sabona ke Ahmed Ake 50th minute ke benale ke thuba apho ke it was saved ke apho then sabona ke apho ke in the 21st minute ke uMayele ke wabona kathi ngabela because bhola begotshwe ngoHamdi yafika ke kuye ke apho ke ngoku so iqala le Pyramid favorite started to show why they are so dangerous. I think that the 21 minutes score isiqingatha eske soqala ke lokudlala ke we-CAF Champions League final ke sike Sundowns ke nesani iqala ke Pyramid it is ke 1-0 ke Pyramid daily 2-1 na cricket.
Thank you very much, Chwako.
Thank you.
I did say that we're going to be checking with Udita again. Part of the questions that I posed earlier on was that nanku umntu uthi yena ke I've been trying for this long kukhona le break in communication, this negligence. How do I go about working around that? Did I think uSkhoko sizasinceda connection yethu no data, but we are not alone. We do have an audience in studio. I think man can pick microphone now.
Mandibulise ndizibambe ngazo zobini kwesilk ndiyathemba ndiyandiva kakuhle kulo cala ngoku ndibulise nakuzizipho your esteemed panelists in studio kunye nabaphulaphuli.
I think because of the delay ne usiva yena udida ke ngoku sesiqhubekeka ndiyafuna khona ubuya kwazi uphinda ungene kwakhona just continue talking, don't mind us. When you do pick this up data, when you can continue Tina no bese sithetha sawukuma sikulinde silinde sukulinde ba mawungena uthetha but quickly
Mandibulele kakhulu Nkosi Sikhesi unyanisile xa usitsho ndinimva kakhulu kunaqala. I firstly I must declare that I'm not necessarily in academia myself. I did my studies at Fort Hare UNISA. I took what Dr. Nkalichana is referring to as your professional qualifications. So as a chartered accountant, I've had the privilege and opportunity to be involved with the integration of new graduates in the workplace. So I've had an opportunity to sort of see the importance of a good academic grounding and how that works out with, partnership with all the other sectors, your private sector, public sector, your entrepreneurship spaces, your civic society, and even academia itself. So it's important that we sort of understand, how academic negligence and the disconnectedness, as you say, can sort of be alleviated over time so that people, as they continuously come back, they add value to each of these spaces to society. Coming back to your question, Yako, and Asilke Goskakulu for that, I think at the core of it, our people are motivated, our people are encouraged. I'd like to believe that all the levels from the students to and by students, I mean even your candidates for each of these postgraduate qualifications, your academics being the lecturers, your supervisors, as well as institutions are all sort of working together towards solving some some of these problems. It just so happens there are various other issues. As Dr. Galchana has mentioned, the different factors that contribute to why we find academic negligence, and most importantly, why we sort of disconnect as ixesha lihamba. I don't think there is much of a motivation issue from our people, but in essence, to answer your question of what it is that we can do when somebody has tried all it is that they can do, Usisibusisiwe in studio has already mentioned, for example, some of the groups that they involve themselves in to sort of help each other. That was to help in a particular problem. And I think these continuing to have these groups, continuing to support one another in these spaces, there are people that are interested in the things we are doing, the types of qualifications that we are doing, the research interests that we have, the postgrad programs that we are running. If we continuously work together as groups, I think when we speak in a unified voice, it becomes better. So perhaps for somebody that's on the brink of rather just letting it be, and because they've tried so much, I don't know if coming together as a collective voice, continuously having other groups of people that are facing similar problems and speaking as one could assist. And again, a chunk of other people may have perhaps tried those sort of things, but the idea and my suggestion is really exactly that, to continuously find spaces, cultivate one another in such a way that we speak in a unified voice and we fight the forces in the system and the status quo together as a group, and rather not let it go. Because the reason why we study all that we study is so that we can take the research, apply it into the real world of work, take the research, apply it to inform new systems, new processes, new ways of thinking, new schools of thought into your private sector, your public sector, your civic society. As I mentioned, all these different sectors, we depend on the research that people do in the academic spaces. It's not purely to be read by academics. So I think my stance again on this is thinking on that bigger picture, on the broader picture of not giving up, because we certainly depend on this type of information that you come up with in your researches.
Thank you very much. I did say that we are not alone in studio. We do have an audience live. So let's take it to the floor.
And good evening, everyone. I just want to chip in on the issue of waiting. And my first advice would be, don't leave it until it's late. I mean, after 5 years, you're still dealing with the issues. You would have seen red flags even from the first year. So don't leave it until late, and don't stay for too long. Try to get to solve it as early. And then number two, I love how my panelist put it, that this is actually a relationship between a student and a supervisor. And also I love the analogy of being the COO, meaning that I also want to drive this. I have a responsibility as well. It's not just a tick boxing exercise that I need to do. My supervisor tells me I do this, I do it, I submit, I do this. You also driving this. So, and also it was also mentioned, which was going to be my advice, a contract. So the thing is, what happens, I'll give an example of a friend of mine. When he was doing his PhD, he did all of his work throughout the year, and then towards the end of November, he just gave everything to his supervisor. And then his expectation was that my supervisor is going to work over December and January, and then by February I get feedback, and then we finalize everything. I graduate in April. So it's really a relationship. So it's not a one way. The student must not only think of themselves, must also think of the other party that is involved in the relationship. So that's where the contract helps you. You sit down with the supervisor, you're like, okay, so if I submit something, I expect feedback within 2 weeks or within a month and so on, and you agree on it, because it's a working relationship. Because sometimes the supervisor also has other commitments, so you must, as a student, you must always think of the supervisor. Do not be only thinking about yourself and then submitting and then having unreasonable expectations, like expecting the supervisor to work over the December holidays when they want to go on a holiday with their own family, you know. And also just don't wait until, I know generally we do have a tendency of submitting, of doing things late. Sometimes it's unavoidable, but sometimes it's just it requires a better time management, you know. So always have that in your mind, that okay, I must give my supervisor as reasonable time to look at my work. And then from the get-go, if you see even for the first year, no man, things are not working out, try to solve it, you know. And don't stay in a relationship after 5 years and then you are like, yes, in a toxic relationship, and then after 5 years when you should be graduating and then you are like, ooh, things are not working out. Try to be proactive as well and try to solve problems as soon as possible using various platforms.
Okay, I think time management in Germany, 20 minutes just before 8 o'clock. I've got 10 minutes to go, Zebs. But quickly, do you have any messages for me?
There's a question from, I think, and caution about kangupendulu na umbuzo.
Okay.
But ubuza kwindo ye balance between their personal well-being and their studies. Because uti sometimes, because yena wa drop out, kuba isithi akakwazi ufumana balance between the two, and ndiyafuna usondela nakumbuzo apha kubhuti kulando ithi, how do they then establish a student supervisor relationship so that kungazuba khona ezingxaki zoba ndi-expectile into ezithile mna as a student and then the supervisor ngumntu naye ekugqibeleni unazo ezakhe izinto. Do you understand? So I think those are questions ziyi-two, ukucopa and the balance between their studies and their mental health and their personal well-being, and the fact that we need to establish a relationship, okanye a student supervisor relationship. How do we do that?
Suspi?
Uza kum kuba ndi-social worker. A relationship, guys, is a relationship. I love the issue of the red flags within that year, you know, red flags that you would see. Look, a relationship is a relationship. And again, if we are not putting ourselves in the center as students and affirming ourselves and being assertive. I know I've dealt with a lot of, there was a gentleman on LinkedIn who approached me to say, hey, ndi-traumatized the supervisor yam. Yeah, ndi-traumatizer. I'm ngubhuti omdala lona, unankosikazi, unabantwana. And as la trauma I experience, we deal with GBV issues because of spaces that we are disenfranchised in, and then we want to center ourselves in spaces, right? And I kept on saying to him, you actually have all of the knowledge. You've got what it takes. You are the expert of your work. And you need to make it clear to this person that I am the expert of this work, and I can take this work elsewhere. I took my work from UOFS, and I took it to Masters, my proposal. I took it from there. I came to NMU, and I finished with the very same proposal. And I learned from that process, but the work is mine. It's my IP. You understand? It is my IP. It does not belong to the supervisor. It does not belong to the institution until I graduate. Do you understand? It's mine. I can take it elsewhere. And when I take it elsewhere, do you know what the implications of that are? The fact that when the institution doesn't get a graduate who would then be paid off. Remember, once they graduate, the head pays the institution money. Each graduate that I produce as a supervisor is imali that comes into the institution, both to the institution and into my research account, which means that I'm able to do more projects. So it's an investment, Nje. That's the bottom line. And most of us don't understand that is what it is. And then what ends up happening with this relationship is be emotionally intelligent about it when we get into it, is that we end up sireka in debt as the student, because you've registered, you haven't produced, you don't have chances to get funding for your studies to be paid off, right? And then you end up with 80,000 debt, 20,000 debt, and you don't have the money to pay that off. So you then get really into a toxic relationship. It just becomes toxic mentally, it becomes toxic financially. You really, in the Shut Up and Write group that we were running, there was a lady who took, I don't know, a decade ukuze abuyele back. And she kept on saying, "Yazi, for me to be even able to face what I'm doing now is because each week I'm checking in with you. Each week I'm checking in with this group. That is the only, otherwise ndibane trembles and I want to do this masters, but in a post-traumatic disorder whenever I think about going in and writing or reading an article. Yet I know I'm brilliant." Do you get what I mean? So the relationship is really a relationship in the same way that, and that's why I brought in my personal relationship to say, even in personal relationships, you would find, if you don't deal with an issue and take that stand, post-traumatic disorder that you would experience way after the relationship has ended. So right off the bat, don't I belong here. I'm not an imposter in the space. That affirmation of yourself makes you able to regulations, know what the regulations are, know the contracts that you're getting into, because as you are registering, that is a contract with the university. That's why uzawufaka ku debt collectors xa ungakhange uyifulfille ukubhatala idebt yakho kodwa khange uyifumane ne-degree yakho. You understand? That is a contract. It's another contract ongena kuyo with your supervisor. Who is this person? I'm being so real. Check ishi articles zakhe, mjonge ku LinkedIn une presence na, mjonge ku ResearchGate, mjonge ku Google, jonga talks zakhe. These talks that we are doing here, most of the academics would have had opportunities to go through those kinds of spaces. Hambo mjonga ku YouTube. Uzawubona, is this the person that I want to have a relationship for the next 4 years with? Because there are people that you can pick up as much as they expert lona kulena into akungowam. It's not for me. And some institutions will allow you to register mhlambi, let's say EWUSU, but uze a supervisor that you really have a good relationship with elsewhere as a co-supervisor up, so that you can expedite your studies, because really upasa is supervisor yako more than anything else, because research is easy. Like what Doc has said, the process of research is easy. Into ipasayo in this process really is that supervisor. Do you get what I mean? So that is important. And then again, those communities of practice in terms of coping are very important. Postgraduate studies do not have to be a lonely journey. Most of the people now who would hit me up on LinkedIn would want to have, I would have 1 or 2 conversations. In fact, I don't even charge for it, because it really is calls to say, to affirm a person. And I've had one student who completed the master's zake akasanixeleli ngoku. 1-2 calls that I had with this person and Fumeneku LinkedIn, and I said to him, you can walk away. You actually can, like, which is figuratively, like, walk away. And he did exactly that. And by walking away and going elsewhere to do their masters, they had a better relationship with the institution, with the supervisor, and they passed, graduate. So I'm imploring students to center yourself. Don't think that you are on your own, and also don't be shy to spy on the supervisor before you get into that relationship. The same way you would slide into that guy or that girl's DMs, do the same with this relationship, ngoba it is just a relationship.
Okay. Yes, we do. If you've got anything that you want to add, let's on the floor talk. And so was, yeah. We've got a few minutes left before the, yes. Okay. Okay, Doc, you can go ahead.
Okay. No, I think, again, I'm a balanced person. And I want to balance this and not always poke holes on one side. I would have had interaction with students from honors, masters, and I would say mostly at master's level. And that would always cry about the supervisors. when you start to have a conversation with the student and you realize that the supervisor was not wrong here, because the student perhaps may have been a victim of being spoon-fed to a level that when the person now is required to say, no, this is how you do this thing, or this is how you are supposed to do it, they feel that that is an abuse from the supervisor. And now as a supervisor, I would not allow you to want me to do your work. I must encourage you to do your work and tell you this is how you do it. And I know most of the students, the most traumatic part is when you get the feedback from the supervisor. We have two ways of it. You interpret it correctly from a positive point of view or negatively. I don't want to say there are supervisors that are very rude in responding to students. And the first time you read the comments from the supervisor, you get traumatized. You don't touch your work on that day. I have experience of that. Then the following, because the read on its own is traumatic, but you gather strength and come back tomorrow. Positively now. Say, I want to see what is this person. Only to realize that actually this person is saying the right thing. So I know students that are avoiding the pain, silk. They're always wanting to shift the blame to the supervisor. They're always going to say, no, the supervisor is that. But when you want to, what is the problem with the supervisor? Because that's what we need to understand. What is the problem? Is the supervisor dictating you what to do, how to do? Or is the supervisor guiding you on the process and don't want to follow? Or the supervisor does not communicate, takes time to communicate. So we need to understand what is this problem with the supervisor in the first instance. Because I can see 80% of the discussion is shifting the blame to the supervisors and less about the students. And I think the last point, I think what needs to be done, in my view, is perhaps to introduce even the research at an undergrad level as a module.
Yes.
Either at third year level, or if it's a 4-year degree at fourth year as a module. You can split it into two. The first part is the methodology, how you do it, first semester, for an example. And then in the second semester, you can then say students must produce a research paper of 7,000 to 8,000 words. Now, what does that help the student on? Should they want to engage in the postgrad, they are not starting from zero. At least they've got a base of, okay, I'm understanding a bit about research, so I just need to be refined here and there. Then you proceed easily. So that's why I'm saying there are ways in which we can do it. So the balancing act that we are asking about it differs from student to student, because we've got different commitments that we're engaging to. What Sianda was saying is correct. You are escaping a poverty, you enroll into a postgrad studies, and the bursary can only pay for studies and accommodation. You need to hustle for Indoyoja, you need to hustle for Unglib and so on, So it means you've got to juggle between your academic work and as well as how do you then feed yourself in the process. School as demanding as it is, but you need to consider that. And what prolongs the studies in most instances is exactly that part, more than the supervisors that we're talking about in some instances. So we just need to sometimes to be honest with ourselves and not always want to shift the blame. When I said the postgrad, in particular, if you do by research from master's up to PhD, maybe the emphasis at PhD is that it's only you and the supervisor. You don't have a classmate that you start with and say, Sifundiswa lento iwani lo supervisor. Yeah, we are stuck. How do we deal with it? Because your topic is your own topic, and the only person is the supervisor. Other people are just coming in because you have gone and gathered the support from them. But when you deal with the core of it, it's actually you're on your own. So there's those coping mechanisms that you try to bring on. But again, we must emphasize that we must not scare people about undertaking their postgrad. We need them. There is no country that has ever developed. You can go to India, you can go to China without research. And you can't do a research with undergrads. You must have postgrad. Produce them as many as they are. The second element in that, we must encourage the institutions to encourage the students to research on topics that are relevant to change the societal outlook, uplift the people from poverty in all forms. That's what we must do, and not research with PhDs, 2,000 of them. But if you look at the meaning of the contribution in society, is none. They're gathering dust where? In the library. So we need to have that kind of mindset when we discuss critically the issue of higher education.
Yeah.
Not in quantity,
but in quality.
Thank you so much.
All right. We've got about 5 minutes before we have to go. Quickly, Sabaleka, so check in with Ukanyiso Truck with the sports, and then Sibuye Sizorapa up.
Thank you very much, ladies. The half-time game, Kalage with Champions League game, Kalamang, the second leg, the Pangamam Sundowns, Kerek Kalage, Pyramid FC, 1-0, the Pyramid FC lead in half-time, get 2 on every get the Sundowns, though, Bapo to back a cool answer on the half-time mark. The 7 minutes of air, get Patrick Matthews in the 6 minutes of added time. You made the pass and you go to Pierre, as I said, get El Shena, we have offensive Sundowns. They were slightly because it was the first genuine goal scoring opportunity we now get Glom Kalabakazang against games like these, games of narrow margins for the Watatama Tobacco game. Sabona Kuma Yellow scored Magu Kalam Kala to the first minute. The Bagin Pazam is indeed as a promote Tibagan Krantikana Benedict Tobagge in the 4th minute of at the time. US Kanaka Tobalagi was blocked by it depends Santa Sabona again like Mohammed cheated. The National he had against the saves by Ronan Williams, Bonage, and the table from Bonage, and Tubage in the 4th minute when we to start down the dominant numbers. But when it comes to Umbagio scoring opportunities, now because they're playing the ball in front of El Kalage, but not putting it behind them. The one time they put it behind them, they did put them under pressure. But half time, you come to Kalogama, they kept the speeding on the pyramid. It is the one that you pyramids, Glom Garden to 1 and
Thank you very much, Traku. We've got 4 minutes to go. Zips, closing?
Kukho umuntu bethetha ngento ye transferable skills.
Okay.
How do we make ezi studies valuable for careers of the future?
Okay.
Because we see many besenza postgrad studies and then we don't see the value. So how do we make them transferable? So I don't know.
This is about a minute each. Maskale to my far left.
So I think for me, in the question of postgraduate studies, as Doc says, that when you choose a research topic, or perhaps said that thing, at least it must be a topic that you are inspired to do something about it post to your studies and all those things. So basically, answering your question is that there's this conversation around the fact that, for instance, in humanities, that these postgraduate studies we are doing are not relevant to the economy, and we disagree in most cases to say that, for instance, the people who are doing sociology and all those things, people are better off understanding the problems of society and so far there's everything that is going on. So basically, for me, I've always been trying to choose topics that I know that post the study itself, move to a particular direction. So it's not a question of whether or not your degree is not relevant or what, but the focus of itself, your research topic should be at least respond to the problem that society faces.
I like that. Thank you. A minute.
Yes, no, I think like as Utok have said, the issue I think is about knowing and research. So you come from Tibini, Vulindlela, Mtezulu, high school. You come to university, you don't even know which course. You think of teaching, you think of nursing.
Yes.
You don't know any other thing. So you are bound to take every first course you meet and you won't know what to do with that. So you have to, I think it's about resources as well. Because these schools that I've just mentioned are deep in the rural areas and that is majority of the schools we have. So those people are bound to not know most of the things because even their passing is dependent on their hard work and the dedication of their teachers. There's no extra support. There's no access to internet. So those people are bound to struggle to identify what they are good at. So maybe when it comes to postgraduate studies, they will just decide later on their lives that, okay, maybe maybe I'm doing my final year, as Doc said, I might not get employed. So I must find a way just to stay relevant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sisbi, minute.
The SAQA NQF level outputs zakwa SAQA ne? NQF level 9, NQF level 10. They tell us exactly what it is that you are supposed to have as a transferable skill that you're supposed to have once you've done the NQF level 9, once you've done the NQF level 10. Isilungu sayo ngokusindibale, but it's the SAQA level descriptors, yes. SAQA level descriptors. They tell you into okokuba ngaba at level 9, this is what you are supposed to be able to do. The attributes that you're supposed to have to be able to have once you've completed a project year research NQF level 9, which is a master's.
Okay.
The same with NQF level 10. So when I think I want to go back to our previous, discussions and this summarize it to say, are you being purposeful in centering yourself and knowing what it is that you want to study? Because the NQF level descriptors themselves, they tell you by the time the qualification, this is what you would be able to do, which is an attribute more than anything else.
Yeah.
No, thank you so much, Msasa Kokon. I think there's something that we need to talk about.
Yes.
Remain the qualification relevant.
Yes.
People get to know. There was something in SASCO, I thought Sianda will talk about it. Campaign called Right to Learn.
Yes.
Go to the communities because you are better off, Tell the students or learners at that level what to expect. It's not only teaching nursing social work. There's more to it.
Yes.
You can start to research about that. That's one. 2, we need to have a serious conversation again, which we used to have it in SASCO, which I'm still maintaining it. Institutional autonomy, which is the universities.
Yes.
Right? Because they must not continue to produce qualifications that are not relevant to the current environment. We are now rendering the education as if it's a useless thing.
Yes.
Because there's many unemployed graduates, and then a child would say, what's the point for me to go and study if there's you who's got master's, PhD, but you're unemployed? So that's why I said topics important for research, but institutions from a qualification point of view, they must continually review their programs, whether it's still worth it to offer it or not. And not only rely because they are wanting to get more money from the students.
Yes.
Right?
All right.
Thanks.
My pleasure, Doc. I think also we need to take it upon ourselves as SAPC Education, both with Upskill and Ngoko, to have these conversations. How do we keep education fashionable? How do we keep education relevant? Because the biggest question is it worth it today for umdana othi ndifuna ukhupha ifamily yam ebuxwebeni baba ndiqhubekeke ndifunde ndiku postgrad ndiye ku PhD level? Is it worth it for me? Is it worth it for my family? But ngenxa yexesha uNtombozuko is standing by already. From myself and my panel, and of course my team, we came, we saw, we conquered once again. We went beyond radio. Thank you very much for joining us. Next week we're back here again to continue with the conversation.